Hey, what's up, everybody? This is One for the Dagger podcast, Feathered Flow and the worst show in Chicago. I am Daniel, a.k.a. Debrinket_Haver, and with me today is Tommy at _88 Showtime. No Johnny today because he decided to get a migraine. That's entirely his fault, so if you miss his absence, then go yell at him. We got a lot to cover because we missed the last week and a half or so because I actually got sick and went to California and enjoyed a nice long vacation on the beach and listened to music and all that good stuff. But a lot of things have transpired, especially a lot of Hawks related things. It's just been kind of crazy because, there's been all these moves that have been kind of made within the organization, nothing external, no trades. But Murphy has come in, he's been activated, and he's looked great. Boquist in turn got sent down. And that's just kind of a starting point I want to launch with is Boquist being sent down because on paper it's a good move. I guess like you can kind of see where it's coming from organizationally. Like, they don't want to move or waive Cuckoo for whatever the reason might be. And they're obviously not going to sit Seabrook for an extended period of time out of fear of a player revolt, as we nearly saw the last time it happened. So Boquist will be down in Rockford getting top pair minutes, power play time. Tommy, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone wanted him to stay up, right? But you kind of look at the situation, and like this way, they don't have to waive anybody. They don't have to make any tough decisions on scratches. So the easiest way to keep him playing was to send him down. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but I see where they were coming from. I think he played more than well enough in the limited time he was up to deserve to stay the rest of the year. He scored a goal. I thought positionally he was better than advertised in the defensive end, but it comes down to making a tough decision, and we know they don't really like to make those, so it's kind of the easy way out, I think.
I was there for that goal, too, and let me tell you, seeing it live, that shot he's got is really something else.
It finds its way through, like, no matter what. I mean, he could have scored a couple more times while he was up,
He almost didn't. That's that game in Anaheim. He hit the crossbar, I think, on another shot of his. He could have had two.
Yeah, and it's refreshing to have, a defenseman that's able to do that because, for how many years we've seen, Keith miss the net by 5 feet, like every time he shoots it, right? So, like, it's kind of nice to, right. So it's kind of nice to know, like, that will be a strength of his when he does eventually get called up and start playing full time. But, yeah, I think it was just the easy way out. I get it, even if I don't agree with it. I kind of see where they were coming from.
I'm pretty much in the same boat as you. And the next time he comes up, I would like to see him get a little bit more power play time, like you mentioned. The way I see it is offensively, he's basically the antithesis of Keith. He's got the puck skills. That shot is just outrageous. And his vision is seriously unparalleled. His playmaking ability. All the tools are there for him to be that sort of Erik Karlsson type player. I'm not saying he's going to turn into Erik Karlsson, but the way I've always seen Boquist is as a top pair defender. I mean, I know a lot of people kind of sell him short and say he'll at least slide into the top four, which I agree with. But man, like his defensive game like wasn't as bad as we were all advertised. He looked really sound positionally, and realistically, a lot of his problems just came from kind of like making really small but teachable mental mistakes, whether it was being too aggressive or not hustling back enough on the forecheck or on the back check, excuse me. When there's being a rush made up the ice by the opposition. Those are all things you can teach. So I'm very high on Adam Boquist. It's part of the reason why I was so looking forward to him getting called up earlier this year. And I think the Hawks really do lack an asset back there, even still with Murphy in. Man, it'd be great to have him as just like, a middle pairing, like puck mover alongside like DeHaan or something like that. That'd be great.
But, yeah, I mean, the mistakes, I mean, he's 18. Like, you can live with those. It's not Gustafson, 27-year-old career minor leaguer, making mistakes.
Well, actually,
it's an 18-year-old
he's 19.
Kid. 19.
You're confusing him with the other prodigal son of ours, but we'll get to him soon.
Anyway, so yeah, but I mean, like, you get the point. They're mistakes you can live with because he's so young. There was one play though in the San Jose game on the power play where like the puck kind of went past him at the point. And he kind of stood still, like, oh shit, was I supposed to get that? And it kind of turned into a breakaway for San Jose and a
Yeah.
goal. And that was like the one play where I was like, okay, that's just kind of like a hockey IQ thing. You got to get straightened out. But I mean, other than that, I mean, almost everything he did was encouraging.
Yeah, no, I didn't see any reason to believe that they should have sent him down other than it being a strict paper move. Um, I've had people, one person in particular, I'm not going to air out any dirty laundry on here though, really take it to me by saying that Rockford will be detrimental to his development, which I just don't see. Like realistically, the main thing he's going to learn down there is to be a little bit more positionally sound, because once he comes back up to the NHL, that offense is still going to be there. It's not going anywhere.
I'd like to see just like they got to have him play. If he's going to be down there, he has to play in every situation. Though he's got to get plenty of even strength time, plenty of time on the power play, and I want to see him on the penalty kill down there too. Like they got to have him in every situation. So I think as long as they do that, I'm okay with the decision for now. But
and to your point about him being on the penalty kill, I think that's a viable option, strictly because he has the foot speed, like that's there. And considering the defensive sort of strategy they want to deploy, even though they're kind of shying away from it a little bit more now with the forwards, I think it'd be really beneficial for him to try and figure out where he needs to be positionally in this sort of system. And so putting him in the penalty kill down in Rockford, or up in Rockford, whichever the fuck you want to call it, would be really pretty beneficial for him. Overall, like I tweeted out, I understand the move. I'm disappointed by it. It sucks because I really liked him when he was up here, but he'll be back up, especially if another player goes down. He'll be the first call up. Not that I'm rooting for anybody to get injured, but you know, it's just one of those things that is what it is. And
maybe they'll trade Gustafson at some point.
maybe that's true. I mean, his value is going up. He has looked a lot better of late than he did in like the first month of the season, because in the first month of the season, he was just unwatchable.
In the first month of the season, I was ready to just send him anywhere and never watch him play. Like it was that bad.
I was ready to send him to a fucking gulag and like not feed him anything for at least a year. Like I just, oh my god, I could not believe how bad he was playing. But you know, with the adjustment, I think he's really sort of turned it around. You know, I don't want to nail him to the cross anymore most nights, which is nice. I guess that's about the nicest thing I can say about Erik Gustafsson's game so far. But he has contributed a bit more, and mostly, like I said, due to the fact that the Hawks actually kind of went back to their old system from last year, which is weird that they ever strayed away from it in the first place, because in the latter half of the season, you know, they're near 100-point pace as a team, and the offense was blisteringly hot. I don't know why they ever strayed away with it, or from it, excuse me.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how that works, right? I mean, about like 2 weeks ago, all the talk was, you know, how soon is he going to get fired? When is this whole thing going to get blown up? Like, unwatchable. And after the San Jose game, which was an embarrassing game, like it was embarrassing how bad they played against San Jose, and they had that day off in between that game and the Vancouver game, and they got back to Chicago, and Jay Zawaski was saying that, you know, they had that meeting with Carlton and the front office. He wasn't told who, but
I'm
just
pretty
think about
sure
it for a second. You can take a guess who it was, and basically said, you know, if things don't change, you're out of here. And you know, they've taken 11 out of 12 points since, so it's kind of crazy how that works. You know, you go back to what actually worked, and it continues to work. I don't know, truly some rocket science shit going on with them there, but I'll take it for now.
The vision I had in my head was them going down to, like, you know, one of the bridges on like Dearborn or Clark or something, and basically Jeremy Colleton had his arms tied behind his back, and John McDonough was basically gripping him by the neck, saying, if you don't cut this shit out right fucking now, we're putting cement galoshes on your feet and you're going fucking under fast. Because I mean, you and me talked about this a little bit before in the group DMs, but there's no way Stan would have the balls to pull off something like that. That's just not his MO. He doesn't have the moxie. Even if he wanted to, I don't think he could. That's where you hire an absolute bulldog like John McDonough to say a few choice words to a guy like Jeremy Colleton. And you know what? As much shit as I give John McDonough, and as much of a horrifically heinous Bond villain that he is, that is probably one thing we could look to as a positive contribution to Blackhawks hockey that he's had in his tenure as, what is he, president? I think
Yeah,
president of
he's
hockey ops.
president. Yeah,
As
my biggest problem with him though is he doesn't. I don't think he really knows the game, and so I'd like to see him stick to the business side of things, which is his job, the marketing, getting people to come to games, selling tickets, all that stuff. I don't need him getting involved per se in all the hockey decisions that that I think he's gotten involved in over the years. That'd be my one complaint on him. But yeah, as far as like that meeting goes, like I said, we Jay Zawaski didn't exactly say what went down, or he wasn't told exactly what went down, but we can all kind of figure out that it was McDonough, and Bowman probably just stood there, didn't say a word, with his arms crossed, like in the corner of the room or something like that.
essentially, yeah.
While McDonough basically told Carlton, look, like if you don't get this figured out, you're out of here, and like 11 out of 12 points, since you can't be mad about that, so we'll take it for now.
Yeah, exactly. It was like you were talking about, though, like the team went just from completely unwatchable, and then it seemed like overnight, or at least the span of a couple days, they went from being just another thorn in the side of all Chicago sports fans to pretty much like must-see TV, which is just bizarre. I don't think I don't think I've seen a team turn it around as much as they have offensively. Just like they have. And there's people who sort of deny the claim that Jay's sources are legitimate, or McDonough or Bowman had anything to do with the turnaround in offense, but I just don't see how you could disagree at this point. Like, there's so much evidence pointing towards it.
I mean, Dylan Strome straight up said it on WGN radio. He was straight up, like almost word for word said, we went back to the way we were playing last year and we all feel more comfortable. I mean, it wasn't rocket science to see that this team was not built to play dump and chase hockey. And the fact that they went, like a dozen games or so, give or take, trying to do that it was insanity.
Oh, it was horrible. Like, they even if they got a lead, they played not to lose. But now you see that, they might have a bad period here and there now. I mean, some truly horrific periods here and there. But the one thing that you can't say they do much of anymore is just straight up give up. Because back when they were playing the way they were through the whole month of October and a small portion of November, they looked like the most disinterested group of people on earth.
Yeah, that San Jose game, the last one they lost before this meeting and all this stuff took place, Kane got robbed of a goal pretty early on. He looked up at the camera with like the most what the fuck like look on his face I think I've ever seen. I've never seen him look so like discouraged or uninterested or any of that after that play. Like when you have guys like that looking like the way that he did, I mean, something's not right there.
And you compare and contrast the two Nashville meetups that they've had in Nashville, for that matter. Both of them have been in Nashville. That first game where they just got, I don't even know the words to describe it. It's literally beyond description how badly they just absolutely got manhandled. It was like trying to watch a junior varsity team play an NHL team. It was like that one scene in South Park where the Pee Wee hockey team plays the Detroit Red Wings. That's pretty much what it was like. It was just a total massacre on ice.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the worst game of the Taves and Kane era by far. And the only other game, like off the top of my head, that I could think is even in the same discussion would be the Sam Gagner 8-point game back in like 2011. I mean, it was so bad.
Even then, that was mostly just sort of like a hiccup at most.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this was just start to finish the worst game that they have ever played.
Yeah.
But it's just like the way it all played out after that San Jose game when Collins basically said or was told if things don't change, you're out of here. I found it kind of weird that after that San Jose game, like every media member in town kind of ran with the dump and chase story. Like all of them. And like I know they understand hockey to like a basic level at least, but they don't all pick up on that at the same time to run stories on that all at the same time. And I feel like something was leaked to them to kind of like get Collins' attention, because that was just weird that like all of them had that story at the exact same time.
Yeah, it seemed to start with Zawaski and sort of kind of spill from there, where everybody caught wind of it, like you said, at the same time. And I mean,
I don't think that was a coincidence.
No, definitely not. And you know what? A lot of this offensive renaissance can be attributed a little bit to market correction. Like there were analytics that back up the fact that the Hawks might have been getting a little bit unlucky But at the same time, like the offense is just so much more confident. They're playing the way that they want to play and the way that they should be playing. The Lions are basically what you and I have pretty much been screaming for since before training camp, which I thought would, shut the fuck up. The whole
Lines don't matter.
Lions don't matter crowd. Yeah, excuse me. But it's still there, which is just hilarious considering like all of the lines that they have structured now have some semblance of that playmaker, puck winner, finisher sort of combination. With a couple, minor quirks here and there that can be ironed out. But
yeah, they're still not perfect, but they're way better than whatever the fuck they had going on for the first essentially month of the season. Strome and DeBrincat on the fourth line, Strome playing wing, David Camp centering Kane, like the list goes on. I don't know what the fuck he was doing with all that. So at least now, for the most part, these are fine and they make sense. So again, another step in the right direction.
And the thing is, I know we've just reamed Jeremy Colleton over and over on the podcast, on Twitter, what have you. But one thing I actually do kind of want to say is I do commend his absolute dogged effort to try and really make some serious effort to turn this defense around. Whether it was the right move or not, whether it was the system that fit the Blackhawks or not, I at least commend him for knowing number one what was at stake, and then number two knowing what the team's problems are. That's about as much credit as I'll give him, because at the same time, if you couldn't see this within the first few games that it wasn't working, that's not good coaching, and I will maintain that's not good coaching. And as a result, they pissed a month of the season out the window.
Yeah, and like I see like what you're saying. I really don't want to give him credit for anything, because I honestly think if he never had this meeting where his job was threatened, nothing changes. Like it literally took like the biggest people within the organization to be like, get your shit together. And so like I don't want to credit him with really anything, because he literally just did this to save his job. He didn't do it because he thought it was the right thing to do.
Well, no, so, and that's not really what I'm getting at. I'm not trying to credit him for fixing the offense, because that's just balderdash. That didn't happen. I'm just saying, like, going into the season knowing that the defense was the issue, making a true effort to try and fix the defense. Like I said, he tried to put a square peg in a round hole, but at the same time, at least he was aware of what the problems were with this team, and that's like the baseline amount of credit that I can give him, and that's about all the credit I'll give him.
And that's kind of like, if you really squint, you can kind of see what he's going for with the dump and shake. Like if you really squint, because he kind of put it on a defense first mentality, which is fine if you have a good defense, but they don't have a good defense. And we all knew from the start that they would have to run and gun every night and win games 6-5 and be competitive, and they're not built to be able to do that playing a dump and chase style game. So like if you really squint, I see like what his thought process was, but it was never going to work.
Yeah, and I mostly just said that not to be too entirely negative about him, because
that's fair.
I still want to like him as a coach. Like I don't want him to fail just so I can be right. That'd just be bogus. And the offensive turnaround has been great and everything like that, but I'm just glad he listened to his higher ups, because if he truly had his way, I'm convinced that we'd still be losing right now and be pulling our hair out. And this podcast, the whole tonality of it would be a lot different.
I think had they have lost that Vancouver game, that first game back at home after the road trip, I think he would have been fired. I mean, he was booed heavily, very heavily before that game. They had just come off a terrible road trip, losing to the two bottom teams in the conference at the time, in San Jose and LA. And then you lose your first game back at home after you got booed in the pregame intros. Like, he would have been gone had they not won that game. I'm pretty sure.
Was that the game where Brandon Saad got that insurance goal to keep them ahead? Or am I thinking of a different game? It was like that one where he crashed the net and like went through the goalie's 5-hole or something.
That was Toronto. That was the game after that, right? I believe that was the Toronto. I think that was the second game after that.
Yeah. Because they almost puked that lead up. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, that was that insurance goal was the Toronto game.
Okay, well, I kind of cite that as one of the reasons why Colleton is also still here, because the Vancouver win was it was good, and like you said, it definitely helped save his job to a certain degree. But if they did keep him around and the Hawks, blew that lead to Toronto, we could also still be singing a pretty different tune, with Mark Crawford potentially being in the interim, but he's not. And the Hawks are looking good right now. I have very minimal complaints outside of the fact that they are getting destroyed in possession some nights and heavily outshot. But one of the scarier things I kind of wanted to point out for the better actually was I looked at Natural Stat Trick the other day, and as of yesterday, which was the 16th before they played Buffalo, they were actually third worst in the league for expected goals for, even with this offensive spike. And then
Okay.
you look at how horrid the power play is.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine what this team's offense would look like with a competent power play?
If it looked anything like it did for that stretch last year, yeah, exactly. It's crazy. I mean, it's trending in the right direction, but like you said, it's still. I mean, the numbers are still kind of saying that not good enough. So yeah, I agree 100%. If the power play, which again he tried to change up, there's new personnel on each of them going back to like the Western Conference trip or whatever. But if they can get anything out of it at all, it would just be a bonus at this point for what they're currently doing 5-on-5.
A bit of a unrelated Hawks note, but still kind of in the same vein of our conversation. Do you want to know who has the second worst expected goals for percentage?
Yeah, sure.
It's Edmonton,
Really?
which is nuts considering that McDavid and Draisaitl are pretty much playing at 2 points per game. I don't think I can find a stat that really kind of accentuates how much they're carrying right now.
Yeah, and they've got James Neal's shooting percentage is probably still through the roof. But
It's
other
like
than that,
22, and
yeah,
then Zach Kassian has a a PDO of like 110, which is going to come crashing down and will be just fantastic. But
yeah.
the
So
next,
that
oh, sorry.
forward group is going to be exactly what we thought it would be, pretty
Yeah,
much.
exactly. And then Draisaitl's PDO is pretty high too. So I mean, he could ride that all year, and I'm assuming they'll probably make the playoffs or something like that. But if they can't find any depth scoring, like Ryan Nugent Hopkins, he's down there doing stuff too, but nothing near the output of what their two top centers are doing. That shit is fucking insane, man. But I'm just glad the Hawks have finally given us something to cheer for again, because I know you're not really much of a Chicago sports fan outside the realm of the Blackhawks, but I root for the Bears mostly for my dad, also the Cubs mostly for my dad. So I'm a pretty true blue Chicago sports fan at this point. And I mean, man, I like if the Blackhawks kept up the way they were playing, like I swear to God, like everybody would be trying to find a cliff to jump off of right now, because considering how the Bears just finished against the Rams, man, there is not a lot to be positive about in Chicago sports right now.
No, there's not. And the thing is when they were losing, we looked at the roster and we were like, maybe they're bad, but they're not this bad. So it's
No,
kind of nice to see it, you know, not to play like the "I told you so" game, but like we knew this was more who they were, not necessarily the first month. So that's been refreshing at least.
exactly. Yeah, and it's like you had mentioned in one of our first episodes. Actually, I think it might have been one of the season previews. Is like this roster, at least the forward group that we have now, is really as deep as it's been in quite a while.
I would argue the best forward group on paper, at least since the 2015 Cup.
Fair enough.
And
And
I mean, that
sorry,
year
go
they
on.
won with four defensemen. Like, it was literally Duncan Keith not leaving the ice, and then Jalmerson, Seabrook, and Oduya, and then like occasionally like teaming in would hop over the boards for a shift, or Kyle Comiskey, or Trevor Van Riemsdyk. Like it was,
Trevor Van Riemsdyk, who didn't
yeah,
have an ACL.
exactly. I mean, they did that with Duncan Keith being not human. Like that was the best individual performance I think I've ever seen, was what he did
Oh
that
yeah,
playoffs. But
it
yeah,
was
probably
definitely the best. Oh, I was gonna say
no, go
best
ahead.
individual effort by a defenseman of the
Oh,
decade.
that was
Easy.
I mean, I don't think there's ever been a more deserved Conn Smythe winner than there was him that year. But yeah, I mean, the forward group is the best they've had since then, and so it was just so frustrating to see them not score for the first month. But it was more a system thing than it was a talent thing, which was what we pretty much said all along.
And who actually had a pretty good game the other night versus Nashville, which I was surprised to see. Was actually Brent Seabrook. And I know that I have tweeted my fair share of just lamenting about him being on the roster just in general. But I hope people know that it mostly comes from a place of just like really just depression, because like the player he used to be is just not who he is anymore. And watching him try to just even play hockey most nights is just upsetting considering what he used to be. But man, I felt really good for Brent Seabrook after that Nashville game. I truly did. I couldn't be happier for him.
And it's against the national team that he was scratched against last time. So it was kind of like a double. You just that's a guy you feel good for and you're happy for him because you still respect what he did all those years, and it's just so tough to watch him now because he's trying. It's not for lack of effort. It's just athletes age and things happen, and that's kind of where he's at right now. And if
Yeah.
he was making a couple $1 million less through like next year only, I don't think anyone would be on him nearly as much. But I mean, it's not his fault. He signed a piece of paper that was put in front of him.
Yeah, exactly. And he went to the media and said that he still got effort to give for somebody, quote unquote. I know that was the huge quote of that week where he said for somebody. But like he showed me up. Like he really did. He showed a lot of us up within that national game. Like I don't know how much of that effort he can truly keep up from here on out, but if he can do what he did during that Nashville game for like the majority of the rest of the year, which was a nice, conservative, cool, and collected game,
Mm-hmm.
just do that. Like I don't know how it could be that hard. Like obviously I'm not an NHL defenseman. Obviously there's a little bit of luck involved in that game. They put up fucking 7 goals, but no, I mean if Brent Seabrook can kind of reform his game to or to how he played during that Nashville game for here on out, I mean that contract doesn't look nearly as bad in my opinion.
No, you can live with that. I mean, he broke up a couple odd man rushes, and plus minus is a terrible stat. Don't get me wrong, but anytime you're in the +5 range, I mean that's a good night, regardless of what you think of the stat. He was good yesterday. He scored a goal that had no business going in on an NHL goalie. So I don't really know what the fuck was going on with Pecorine last night, but I'll take it. But
His hip
um,
exploded.
yeah, but I mean, yeah, he looked good, and if he can give that more nights than not, that type of effort, everyone would take that.
Yeah, I would take it every, I don't know, like 10 times out of 10, obviously. It's not going to happen 10 times out of 10, but as long as the majority of his play style is more refined to how he played in Nashville, I'd be really satisfied. I would not harp on him as much. Not that he gives a shit about what I have to say about him, considering I'm just some asshole with like 500 followers on Twitter. But um, and that's not a flex. But it's just no, yeah. I was really happy with the way he played, and it's good to see him kind of regain some semblance of form.
Yeah, I mean, he'll never be the top pair defenseman that he used to be, but I mean, if he can just be productive out there, relatively speaking, everyone would take that.
And if there's 2 more guys who definitely deserve some praise in these, not just these last stretch of games, but the whole season, is the goaltenders in Corey Crawford and Robin Lehner.
And yeah,
Robin
they've both
Lehner,
been.
I think as much as I kind of like to poke fun of him for his politics, I don't actually like really hate the guy at all. It's mostly he's just kind of a meme to me at some points, but that dude, like, man, he could have gone to the media and pouted so many times about how much the defense sucks and how much the system's not working and stuff like that, but he never did that once. He always kept his head up. He praised the defense, which is just
Yeah,
incredible to me. And like as much as the offense has started clicking, like hockey is a big part of it's a mental game, and keeping that positivity kind of within reach of your locker room, I think, is really important. And I don't think there's been a guy who's done a better job of that than Robin Lehner.
no, absolutely not. And you talk about they played really well against Nashville, but those first, I don't know, 10 minutes or so weren't very good. I mean, he stood on his head there before the Hawks kind of got their feet underneath him and kind of took off there. I mean, it easily could have been 3-4-5-0 before the
Oh,
Hawks, got going there. And he's been awesome. Like you said, the defense in front of him, for the most part, has been a disaster. He's had 50 puck shot at him multiple times, and he doesn't bitch about it. He just comes out after the game. Look, we played really hard. I really appreciate what the defenseman did in front of me, and we're going to get better. We're going to go from there. Like that's a great teammate. That's a great person. His attitude, this whole season so far has been outstanding. I think just the praise he has for everyone, even when things aren't going well. That's a guy I'm very happy to have.
And one of the things I really appreciate about him actually is his willingness to put things into perspective. Because one thing I must have just totally missed somehow, and I do not know how, is because apparently he was an alcohol addict, abuser. I don't really know the proper terms, which is I, I don't know. He was very very reliant on alcohol for a time, so
Yep.
I heard. And when you go through something that hard, um, you do a lot of looking in the mirror, especially when you start to snap out of things. You start to realize, all the things that you used to worry about, you don't really worry about that much anymore. All the things that seem so bad at first, they get better. And I really think, if there was a silver lining to anything that Robin Leonard experienced, which I know is horrific and depressing and one of the most just awful things a person can go through. I think that's the silver lining as to how he kind of even just turned his career around, because back a few years ago he was just kind of a middling goaltender when he was in Ottawa and Buffalo, and he had a huge coming out party with the Islanders, and now he's here and carrying that performance over to the Chicago Blackhawks, to a team who arguably needs it most. And thank God, we don't say this enough, really, um, for Stan Bowman, which is kind of weird to say, but that was an insanely good, well thought out pickup in free agency, because I think Stan understood that as many band-aids as he could put on defense, whether it be Mata or like Gilbert, or a call up like Dahlstrom, even though I guess he's not really here anymore, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
um he went out and got a guy that he believed in, and the guy he believed in also now believes in himself. He believes in this team, and I don't see a reason why you shouldn't extend him for another 5 or 6 years after this season, because he has been aces this entire time.
Yeah, I'm really glad he was able to get his personal life in order and get back on the ice. That's first and foremost, the best thing out of all of this. Um, but I think a lot of people wanted to credit his success to the Islanders' defensive system and the way Trotz likes to play, which I guess in theory is fair. But he put up some pretty good numbers on Buffalo when, like he said, they were the worst defensive team in the league. So that year on Long Island was actually new for him. Like, he wasn't used to facing that little amount of shots, or those little amount of odd man rushes or breakaways or high quality chances, what have you. Like, that was actually new to him, like he said. Whereas kind of how he's playing with the Hawks now is what he's been used to. Yeah, the Hawks kind of fell ass backwards into signing him, I think, because I don't know why the Islanders didn't want him back. Or I don't know why other teams kind of weren't jumping, to sign him. But when they first signed him, like, my first thought was like, oh my God, like, Corey Crawford's never going to play again. Like, what happened to him? And but when you take a minute and you realize, okay, Crawford actually is still healthy. You look at it as more of an insurance policy, and you look at, I mean, when he went down originally in 2018, they were a playoff team, and the whole season fell apart when you had to rely on Jeff Glass and Jeff Berube and
Oh man.
Anton Forsberg. I mean, those guys were horrendous, and your season went down the drain. And last year, Cam Ward, Colin Delia, they were okay.
They're
Like, I think they were
respectable.
perfectly fine, but on a team as defensively challenged as they were, it wasn't good enough. So you go out and you get the insurance in Leonard this year, and he's just been better than I would have expected.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. And I don't talk about myself or this side of my life personally that much, but as somebody who does have that shared experience, admittedly, um, I have gained quite a bit of respect for Robin Leonard, because that's nothing easy to go through. And I can't imagine what he's been through over the years, but man, am I glad that he's gotten through it. Not just because he's on my hockey team, and not just because he's playing well for my hockey team currently, but just from person to person who's gone through the same thing. Robin Leonard, if you ever hear this at any point in your life, thank you. I appreciate it. Um, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And then there's, Corey Crawford, who, everybody thought he was done, especially after that concussion he sustained from Evgeny Malkin going full fucking knee into his head. Um, just, it's like I said, everybody thought he was done, but no, he's come back and he's become the elite goaltender that we already knew that he was.
He's
Sure, he
good.
was. Oh, I was gonna
Not,
say, sure, he was shaky a little bit last year, but I mean, the guy just time and time again has just returned to form, and
yeah,
um, I think I said earlier this year, like, this is probably the last we're ever gonna see of Corey Crawford, and this is sort of his swan song with the Blackhawks. Like, man, I'm not really the guy to say, he should take a hometown discount. This guy's gonna take a pay cut just to stay with the Blackhawks. But man, I mean, you think it's entirely possible that he could actually end up doing that, because he looks pretty damn good.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure right now. I'm not sure because he started off slow, but if you really broke down the numbers, that it kind of came from his save percentage shorthanded was like sub 600. It was just comically bad, and that's kind of why it looked like he was struggling. Because 5-on-5 he was pretty good, but he's rebounded well since. He was awesome tonight. He was awesome his last start. I believe his save percentage is up to 914, which is I will take that. 10 times out of 10.
Especially after the start that the team had as a whole. Take
Yeah,
that all day.
exactly. But then I look at he's 36, coming off two pretty bad concussions. I just don't know. I want him to play for them forever. I just don't know how much you can invest in him going forward, given the injury history and the age. When you've got Robin Lehner here, who's only 27, and I would like to see them re-sign him just from a standpoint of going forward. I think it's a smart strategy. But
Oh yeah, no,
yeah,
yeah.
I gotta be honest with you. I never thought about the possibility of Crawford playing for the Hawks past this year. I gotta say, I didn't really. I've never really given that much of a thought. But it would be interesting to see, how
I
that would
just
play
think
out. I
that
guess.
there's a plausible timeline in my mind where you could do both. Um, I mean, you get his $6 million off the book this year. What if he takes it down to 3? Uh,
Yeah,
that'd be really nice, just for like a year.
yeah.
And
But and you got to look at would he be willing to split starts again? Would Leonard be willing to come back splitting starts or not playing? Or not taking 50 or 60 starts? I mean, there's a lot of factors I guess that go into it, but. I guess I just never thought about him playing for them past this year. And I got to say, I love him and he'll forever be a legend in this town. But if they had to choose between one, it's Leonard for me.
oh yeah, me
But
too.
if there is a situation where they would be able to bring him back, I'd be all for that.
Well, one of the reasons I even kind of considered it at first was not because, just because I want him to stay. Well, I do, but you look at the defense going forward next year, like it looks fine. Like, I don't know how many people are going to be moved out after this year. Like, you're still going to have Mata under contract for another couple of years. You're still going to have Dahan under contract for another couple of years.
Right.
Gustafson will be gone, but then you still got Seabrook for like another 4 or 5 years or whatever it is, and you still got
Right.
Keith. And you're going to want to put in Boquist and Mitchell at some point. Like, there are upgrades there, but how big of upgrades are there really? Are they really? Like, it'll be Mitchell's first full season coming out of college. If it's not him, it'll be like a guy like Chris or Bodan. And as much as I like them, it'll still be their first year in the NHL too. So there's just a lot of variables, like you said, like whether it goes into re-signing Crawford or not. But at the same time, there's just as many variables about what's going to happen to the defense in the next year or so, because the free agent market doesn't look that great, and I don't expect them to go out and get really much of anybody, considering that they still got to re-sign Dylan Strome and I think a couple others. But no, I just think there is a timeline that exists that Crawford and Lehner are still on this team even next year. I wouldn't put it past Crawford to walk. I wouldn't put it past the team to trade him at the deadline. And at the same time, now I wouldn't put it past the Hawks to sign him to a 1-year extension for a pretty sweet deal. I think all are relatively acceptable.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I could see that too. I guess I never really thought about it before, like right now. But I mean, I also kind of feel like there's already an extension in place for Leonard that they, just out of respect to Crawford, aren't going to announce till the end of the season. But I kind of feel like that conversation was already made, and things are kind of on paper already for that to happen for him to stick around. But
I agree.
just out of respect to Crawford, that's not something you announce right now.
Yeah,
It'll be
and
interesting for sure. I hope there's a scenario where Crawford could stick around. I guess I don't entirely see it.
And, you know, the indignities against him never cease. Like, I know everybody had given up on him at the beginning of the year, but seeing what he's done, not just this year, you know, in the comeback that he's sort of had, but over his whole Blackhawks career, man. I mean, like, yeah, he didn't look that great in that Nashville series in 2015, completely reeled it back in, and
I mean,
basically helped drag this team by the dick to a Stanley
yeah,
Cup.
I mean, Quinville went to him in game, what was that, game 6, right? Game
Yeah,
6? And
yeah.
he was awesome, and they ended up clinching the series, and he never gave the net back to Darling. But, yeah, he never got the respect that he deserves. He probably never will. That guy, for what that guy's done since 2013, and what he did in 2011, really, with that team, which that was not a good team, and he, you know, almost single-handedly dragged them through that Vancouver series and that comeback. You know, there was only one time that I really ever gave up on Crawford, and that was the Phoenix series in 2012, where he let in two of the worst goals I've ever seen in overtime of
Oh
games 3 and
man.
4.
And didn't Bodker score both of
Bodker
those?
scored both. Game 3, if I remember correctly, was from like almost like at the goal line, but in the corner, somehow went in. And then game 4 was like a partial breakaway where whichever defenseman was chasing him down, like prevented Bodker from actually getting a shot off. The puck just like fell off his stick and somehow beat Crawford through
It
the
just
legs.
creeped in. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember seeing that live. That was infuriating.
and that was the point where I was kind of like, okay, this guy cannot get it done. They got to move on. I want a new goalie. And then, you know, you had the lockout. So you had what? They played like no games for like 9 months. And I kind of had that break to kind of cool off and chill out. And he came back for the 2013 season. And he hasn't looked back since. So I am thrilled to be wrong about that from the 2012 season. He's
Yeah.
been outstanding.
That was the other thing I was going to mention is that I think people sometimes forget that he should have been the Conn Smythe winner
In
um,
2013.
in
Yeah.
2013. He was insanely good, but the only reason he didn't get the bid was because of that stupid OK Corral shootout that ended in what, like 5-4 in overtime, and he just couldn't save anything on the glove side. That was one game.
Yeah, there was two instances. Well, the one was, do you remember in the Detroit series? It was game 6, so they would have been down 3-2 at the
Two,
time,
yeah.
and he gave up that wrist shot goal from like the blue line. Somebody was like coming in on the
Oh,
rush.
yeah.
It was like the end of the second period, so they went into the third period down like 2-1 because he had given up this just that little floater from all the way from back behind the blue line. But then, you know, Hanzus tied it up, and Bickle scored to give him the lead, and then Frolik had the penalty shot, and it literally didn't end up mattering. He was great for game 7. He was outstanding against the Kings, and then outstanding against Boston, except for that one game, game 4, or game, what game was that? Yeah,
I think it was game
game
four.
4.
Game
Game,
4.
because
I thought it was
Seabrook
game
won in
5
overtime.
before, but game 5 was at home. I totally
Yeah,
forgot. Yeah.
so it would have been game 4, with the one that Seabrook won in overtime, where he
Yep.
just kept getting beat on the glove hand. But like one of them, like Johnny Boychuk, took a slap shot from like the top of the circle, like 105 miles an hour, probably right over his glove. Like, who
Yeah.
cares?
And even for the rest of the playoffs, like that game included, he still had over a 920.
Yeah, he was awesome. It was literally, it was game 4 against Boston that made everyone come up with that bullshit glove hand narrative. And yeah, that
Everybody thought he was just grossly outmatched by Tuukka Rask, which just wasn't true.
no, I'd take Crawford. I'd take Prime Crawford over Prime Tuukka any day. I'd take Prime Crawford over, maybe a hot take here. Let me know. I'd take Prime Crawford over Henrik Lundqvist any day of the week.
I would do the same. I think
Okay.
I think one of the only goaltenders I would take in their prime over Corey Crawford is probably Carey Price. But other than that, the list is really, really short. And I have statistics to back it up. So if you want to hit me up on Twitter, I'll die on this hill. I really will. Like, there's not many better goaltenders in the last, 7, 8, 9 years than Corey Crawford has been, like, at all.
And he never got the respect from pretty much anybody outside of Chicago, and then too high of a percentage of Hawks fans just never cared for him for whatever reason. But you know, he definitely had his fans, and there's a lot of people that are truly appreciative of what he did, or what he is continuing to do.
To move on a little bit, I just want to put our focus back onto the youth movement a little bit. Kirby Dach, dude. Wow. I cannot believe that kid is 18 years old.
I could not be more happy to be wrong about questioning that pick, because
Yeah.
like, I want to be clear that it's not that I didn't want Dach. It's that I just really, really wanted Bowen Byram.
Exactly.
It
Me
was
too.
never. Oh my God, I don't want Kirby Dach. It was a combination of Bowen Byram is the perfect pick for the Hawks here, and then B, I kind of felt like maybe they could have traded back a few picks and gotten Dach also. But holy shit, like I'm so happy to be wrong about that. He looks outstanding. He just continues to get better. He had 2 goals tonight, up to 5 on the year now, and that kid is going to be special.
Yeah, and one of the things I actually was completely wrong about his game was his skating. Like I just assumed he was going to be another, slow-footed Artem Anisimov type, but that kid, his stride is actually legit. Like it's an NHL skating stride. Like he doesn't really need that much work put into it. Like I mean, there's always margin for improvement, but he's got deceptive speed. The way he utilizes his body when he skates is good. He bowls himself to the net. Like he uses his size to his advantage,
Yeah,
and he's got the hands in tight to really do a lot of damage, as was evidenced tonight by a couple of those slick backhand goals. The one thing that kind of makes me frustrated, even amongst all this success that the Hawks have been having this last couple games, is I know it might sound a little nitpicky, but Doc's ice time hasn't really been good up until tonight.
yeah. For before tonight, he was averaging what like 7.5 ish minutes a game, and that's just I just don't see the benefit of that. He needs to be playing more, and if you want to keep him in the bottom 6, that's fine. I know it's working with Carpenter and Smith right now, but I'd really like to see him get bumped up to the third line with Shaw and Kubalik.
Well,
Um,
here's oh sorry, finish your thought.
but I was gonna say it's working for now and they're winning, so it's tough to complain, but it's like there's kind of a I think there's a better way to go about his development here.
And the thing is, the way I think about it too is not only would it be better for his development, but again, the offense could be even better than it is now if you slotted him between, two of their better possession forwards, especially with a finisher like Kubalik, who just has an insane shot, and Dach has the playmaking abilities to really complement that. That's something I really want to see. But I was wrong about Ryan Carpenter, and to be honest, I think a lot of us were really wrong about Zach Smith as well. What they've contributed to the team hasn't been negative in really any capacity. I just think for a kid like Dach, who is a very finesse player, um, I just see line mates like Carpenter and Zach Smith as sort of empty calories for his development. Like, sure, they'll be fine for right now on the fourth line. You're giving them really sheltered starts and everything like that. That's cool, but if he's excelling there right now, he really is. And I think if you really want to see more of the player that you want to develop him to be, then you just flip Kampf with Dach on that third and fourth line. And I really don't know why people have gotten so many ants in their pants about wanting to me wanting to flip the bottom 6 centers. Like that's not a huge deal at all. It's not going to throw the entire team out of whack. And the point I made about his ice time, he played 13 minutes and 46 seconds tonight. And did the team explode? No, he got a bump in minutes and nothing happened. In fact, he played very, very well. Um, I would really like to see what he has. Just at that next step, like it's a baby step, but it's still a step because you know what he can bring to the fourth line now, and it's good, great even, but give him a little bit more of that push, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and then also on the flip side, now I don't even really care to get too much into this, but if you put Camp with Carpenter and Smith, I think that's one of the best fourth lines in the league.
Oh,
So I think
if not
it's
one of the best, especially
right,
once Kajula comes back too.
right. So I think you're improving in multiple areas by doing that. But yeah, he's been awesome. That play he made against Vegas the other night, where he was pinned up against the bench and he reached around a defender, made a one-handed pass to Zach Smith, who skated to the circle, dropped it back to DeHaan, and he went bar down for the goal. I mean, he made a one-handed pass with a guy just pinning him up against the boards, and like I feel like nobody really talked about it. Like just even the little things he's doing is, I mean, it's very noticeable. Like he's been outstanding, and just I mean he's 18. Like imagine what happens when he puts on another 20-25 pounds. Like
Oh, he's gonna
it's
be a
gonna be
monster.
yeah.
Like that, he could be like, I don't want to say like Lindros level, but like If you had to pick a guy who you could maybe compare him to in the future, like the Getzlaff comparisons aren't bad. The Scheifele comparisons I really don't mind either, but I think there's another level to his game that those guys just I think Kirby Dach might be a bit of a cut above both those two comparables.
And he's doing all the right things. I mean, if you look at what every goal he scored so far, where is he? He's going to the net when he's scoring these goals. Like, he's doing all the right things. I mean, that second goal he had today, where Smith made that outstanding pass to hit him as he just blew by Jack Eichel, and then roofed a backhander. I mean, how did that goal develop? Well, he flew through the neutral zone with a ton of speed. Like, that is exactly how you want to play. That's exactly what you want to see him doing, and he's getting rewarded for it.
Yeah, he bitch slapped Jack Eichel pretty much all night. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a franchise player get so schooled by an 18-year-old, first just dozen games in the league. That was pretty nuts.
Yeah, that
Um,
was awesome.
yeah, he's fearless. He's not afraid to use his body. I really like him. Like you said earlier, I could not be happier to be more wrong about a player. The outlook for him is good. Like I said, I think he's a bit of a cut above what people initially rated him. Now that I've actually watched him play in the NHL, he's acclimated just so nicely. And yeah, he's got a little bit of a shooting percentage spike ever since his scratch, which didn't do anything, by the way. He did not need the rest.
No, he did not score against Toronto because he sat against Pittsburgh.
No,
He didn't learn anything from watching that game against Pittsburgh. Let's just cut that shit. Yeah.
Let's not pretend that Jeremy Colleton just didn't overthink those two scratches for Boquist and Dach.
Yeah. Let's just cut the bullshit. That had nothing to do with it.
No.
Yeah. And you know what the thing is that I know Colleton's gonna do it again this year. Like, I know he will. And I'm trying not to get pissed about it. Like, but I know he's gonna do it again.
Well, hopefully the next time he does it, they're actually in a position to where they can actually kind of afford to give a guy like him some rest. Because back when they were playing against Pittsburgh, they were still getting their sea legs under them. Like, that loss could have looked way worse than it actually was had, they not had the stretch that they've had since. And to be honest, I don't really understand the whole rest angle of it anyway, because you're still only giving them like 8 minutes a night. Like, why the hell do you have to rest an 18-year-old kid to play 8 minutes?
He's fucking 18 and he's like a dozen games into his career. He's not tired. Like, he's fine. He's okay. He'll be okay. Like, I promise. But
yeah, and people like to bitch about his face-offs too, like it's in the 30% range or something like that. The dude literally takes an average of 2.38 draws per game. I did the math. That's not going to get him to develop his face-offs. And if he loses one, it just looks bad on his stat sheet anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and if he's taking that little that little amount of face-offs, I don't really even care if he plays center this year. Like, if they somewhere down the line in the season they think he's better on wing, shit, put him up on with Taves and Sott in the first line and see what he's got. Like, I'd be totally okay with that.
I'd be okay with that if he got that little in between step like I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you put him on the third line, see where he goes from there.
I'd also like to see him on the power play. I mean, the power play's not working.
Man.
So
the fact that he didn't get a Hattie off the power play tonight is a fucking travesty. And the only reason that is because Colleton didn't put him out there, even though he completely took control of the hockey game.
Yeah, I mean, nothing against Alex Nylander. I think he's been better than advertised as well. I've been pretty happy with him. I don't really need to see him on the power play right now. Throw Dach in his spot, see what happens. And then the other thing is I would not be opposed to him getting minutes on the penalty kill. With his height and his size and his reach, I think he could be a real asset on the penalty kill. But the penalty kill has actually been, pretty good lately. Compared to last year and compared to the way the season started, but I wouldn't mind seeing him there either. Somewhere down the line.
He's got an active stick. Like, you saw that one play he made that set up Kubalik's goal against Nashville. That was just beautiful. Like, defensive positioning. It was just a nice clean takeaway from Matt Irwin, and the way he just had the confidence and the vision to find Kubalik just in the slot like that was a veteran play, man.
Yeah,
like, you don't see many 18-year-olds in the NHL do that ever.
He's getting better every game. If there is one criticism I have of him, and it's really, I mean, he's 18, so like, I get it, but like, there's been a couple times where he tries to skate his way through like three guys, and it's like, okay, that's not going to work here. Like, dump it in, chip it off the boards to yourself, do something where you're not trying to skate through two or three guys at a time. But he'll figure it out. He's only 18. It's not that big of a deal. Just like a minor thing that it's like, okay, this isn't working, you know?
And even then, it might just come with size too.
Yeah,
Like
that's
once he
true.
gets bigger, he might be able to even pull that off, which would be another wrinkle to his game that would make him even more special.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mind if I get into the prospect roundup?
No, go for it.
Okay, no problem. So I pulled these up, and it looks like that a lot of the guys that I've been kind of talking about a little bit more regularly have been keeping up their production. Michael Tepley still in the WHL for Winnipeg Ice, 19 points in 20 games. Really like him on that point per game pace, especially for I think he's like a 4th-round pick. Here, let me check you really quick. I think I checked this last week too. Yeah, 4th round, 105 overall, point per game in the WHL. That's good stuff. Alec Regula, 16 points in 15 games. That's the defender that they picked up in the Perlini trade. Really like him, and I really like the angle that he is actually pretty decent friends with Boquist as well. I think he's actually going to be a pretty good fit on the Sox blue line because he's a big guy who can move and he can contribute on offense, and he's a nice sort of like stay-at-home defender type who doesn't really make dumb plays. I like him. Evan Barrett has gotten 12 points in 11 games, 10 of which are assists, which I think is mostly his calling card. I know he had scored quite a few goals last year, but I think he's going to be a really good bottom 6 playmaking center one day, or a winger or something like that. He's a decent asset to have. And then
He scored a pretty sick goal a couple weeks ago, last week
he
or maybe 2
did,
weeks ago.
yeah. Those hands where he like flipped it up to the air to himself and then like
Yeah.
batted it in.
Yeah, that was sick.
Like that's some pretty crazy shit, even for the NCAA. Like that sort of stuff doesn't happen often because that competition isn't that far removed from the NHL. The kid can play. And then Ian Mitchell kind of cooled off a little bit, but he still got 10 points in 12 games. I've always liked his game, and I'm sure he'll sign with the Blackhawks after the college season is over. I don't see Denver getting bounced that early, so we probably won't get to see him this year, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But,
that would be a hope of mine. You know, if they lose early, I'd be more than happy to burn a year of that contract to see him for, you know, a handful of games and maybe even the playoffs. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm just, you know, it'd be nice to see him this year. I just don't think it's going to happen.
I agree. And then Cole Moberg, my guy, still a pretty solid defender for Prince George, which I wish he'd just get the hell out of there. 12 points, 17 games. He's a 7th rounder, performing very well for just a dog shit Prince George team. Really like his game. He's the guy who I mentioned earlier in the season kind of draws comparisons to Bufflin, even though they're, a little bit different. It's mostly just because they can both play defense and wing. But other than that, we can get to the questions here.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got I forgot to pull these up, but I still got them. So Amanda at Amanda_M915 said, thoughts on the new D pairings and what do you think this streak is, or do you think this streak is going to last? I'm going to kind of compare or kind of package this in with Manny Donovan's question at Manny Donovan is, do you think this is just sustainable or a hot streak? The new D pairings, as far as I'm concerned, are fine. I think they're as good as they're going to be for right now, especially with Murphy back. He definitely solidifies that top 4, I think, better than most people give him credit for.
Well, the thing with Connor Murphy is I don't think he'll ever get the credit he deserves because he came here for Hjalmarsson, and Hjalmarsson was just a fan favorite warrior out there, won 3 cups, and I just think people never wanted to give Connor Murphy a chance. And I think I was kind of like that at first too. And I quickly realized, like, holy shit, this guy can play. And he is solid back there. He's been awesome in his 2 games back from injury. He had a great play tonight where he kind of went down on a knee and got his stick in a lane to break up a 2-on-1. He's been outstanding. The pairings are not, they're fine. Like, they're not how I'd want them. So, like, right now, they've got Keith with Gustafson. They've got
DeHaan with
and they've got DeHaan with Seabrook, and they have Murphy and Mata. My biggest complaint there would be Keith with Gustafson. Though Gustafson has played better lately, Murphy and Keith were outstanding together in the handful of games they played for. Murphy got hurt, and I'd like to see him go back to that. But they're winning games right now, so I'm kind of a believer in if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. So as long as they're winning, I can live with them, but I'm not the biggest fan of them.
No, I'm not the biggest fan either. It's like you said, Murphy and Keith kind of played together. I think the way I would kind of structure the lines or pairings, if I had to, like, gun to my head, it'd be Keith Murphy, I would say Dahan with Seabrook, if they can, kind of maintain the stability that they've had in recent games, even though Dahan just had a horrible third period versus Buffalo tonight. It didn't cost him anything but a goal. But as long as they can, stay afloat, I'm fine with them being together. That can be a nice de facto shutdown pairing. And then Mata is, he's a guy, but I think where Gustafson really belongs is on the bottom pair. Not because I think he's horrible and and he's bad defensively. I mean, I'll say that, but like if you can put him in a more sheltered role and still give him the power play time, I think he could be even better than he is now. That's just how I'd do it, though.
Yeah, he's been better. I mean, he started the season so bad that I was trying to figure out just how he can play anywhere but, I just wanted him to go away. He was that bad. And kind of since they've, restructured their offensive game, I feel like, not coincidentally, he also found his game when the offense started playing better. So he's, I can tolerate him right now. I'd still like to see him traded at the deadline, but he's fine for now. And Mata, he really has not bothered. I think he's been pretty solid this year. I'll say that he has not been. I don't think he's really been an issue. I think he's been pretty good.
Yeah, he hasn't been brutally offensive, and he has his faults, but nothing that makes me want to launch him into the sun most
Right.
nights.
He's been a perfectly fine bottom pair defender.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it comes to the tune of like $4.5 million, but that's neither here nor there.
All right.
As far as the hot streak questions come, I mean, I think, like we mentioned, this is more of what we expected out of them. Granted, it's come with a little bit more luck, and I think this isn't entirely sustainable. I don't think they're going to win by like 4 or 5 goals every night. But I think the production will still keep its pace, especially because the confidence in the locker room now is so much higher than it was just even last week or a couple weeks ago. It's just night and day, like we said.
Right. Yeah, I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, go on.
Yeah, so I was going to say, 11 out of 12, 11 out of every 12 points, that is not sustainable. That will not keep happening. But as far as, the way the offense has looked with all the scoring lately, that I think is sustainable. Not necessarily scoring, 5 goals per game like they have, but just creating the chances that they have. I see that happening for the rest of the year, especially if Strome, DeBrincat, and Kane stay together, especially if they're kind of allowed to just run and gun for the rest of the year. Because, I mean, we talked about it. That's how this team's built to win. They're not going to win games 2-1. They're going to win games, 5-4, 6-5, things like that. So if they can keep playing that style and cashing in on their opportunities, the offense is going to stay, producing enough for them to win games. But as far as taking 11 out of every 12 points, I mean, that's not the best teams don't even do that. So that part is not sustainable.
That's just hockey. It's random. Sometimes it happens. But the one thing that can happen and is within their control is even if, the 5-on-5 production kind of simmers down a little bit, like it probably will, like let's not pretend it won't. The power play, like I said, still has room for a lot of improvement.
Right.
If they can get back to anything, not necessarily like the 40% like they were at last year, but I don't really see a reason why they can't just make a few adjustments here and there and have a competent power play that kind of, eventually ends up evening out the regression that they're eventually going to have at even strength.
And yeah, I agree. And what's so frustrating about this, this offensive turnaround is that this is what was happening last year when they were making a push for the playoffs. And then what happened? Then Colin got his training camp bullshit that everyone claimed everyone just wanted to die on the hill that he needed this training camp to get this team to where it was supposed to be. And the training camp straight up ruined them. Like they were horrific for the first 15 games or so of this season. And it just makes it's so frustrating that they couldn't just say, this is what worked last year, let's keep doing it. Because look at them now. Look at Strome, DeBrincat, and Kane. Look at their chances they're coming up with every single game. Their breakouts have been much better out of the defensive zone. If you look at that goal, the 4th goal against Nashville the other day, where it went Mata, Kubalik, Shaw, back to Mata, over to Camp, and he just blasted a one-timer as he streaked up the middle of the ice. I mean, that type of puck movement was non-existent for the first month of the season. And then you see how effective it's been. And it's just so irritating that people thought this training camp thing was like what they actually needed, because it was just he messed with what was working, and you shouldn't do that ever in any sport.
I agree. Moving on to the next question. I don't really have anything to add to that because you just nailed it. I think you put it in better articulation than I ever could. It's from Dan Insinga at Dan Insinga. I think I'm pronouncing that right. But he says, do you think this team has turned a corner and can contend for a playoff spot? Yes. I think this is, like I said, more of what we expected. Even if it is just a wild card 1 or 2 spot, I think that's perfectly within reach. And as of right now, it is within reach because they just leaped ahead of Nashville. And I think they're like, what, 1 or 2 points out of a wild card spot right now?
1 point behind Calgary with 3 games in hand. So
that's perfect. Yeah. I know somebody said I just had some blind optimism last week when I thought that they could contend for a playoff spot. I mean, look at them now. This is where we want them to be. Like, for as bad of a start as they had and as frustrated as I was with Carleton's system, like, they're still doing okay in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I picked them for the second wild card in the West before the season started, and I don't see any reason why that's out of reach right now. And they're not that far behind Winnipeg. I want to say is the third team in the Central right now. I don't have the standings for. I think it's Winnipeg. They're not that far behind them. I mean, I don't know if over the course of the next 60 games or whatever that they're good enough to finish top 3 in the division. Probably not. I think we're looking wild card, but the West is not good. The West is bad actually. So if they can keep playing, the way they have been, I mean, who knows? Maybe they can sneak into that 3rd spot, but I think wild card's more realistic, and I absolutely believe they can get there. And I think I'm more optimistic than a lot of people. I think, I'm ready to declare them back after every win. That's nothing new for me. I don't know. I really like the way they're playing now, and quite frankly, I bought when they beat Vancouver last week to end that losing streak. Kane said it after the game. He said, "We're going to get this thing turned around. We're going to go on a run," and I believed him. Like, That's a guy that knows what it takes to win. That's a guy that's been there, 3 cups. If he says they're going to get it turned around, shit, that's good enough for me. I believe in them with the way they're playing right now, so I don't see any reason why a playoff spot is out of the question at this point.
I do too. And as far as being back goes, I think if they win one of the next 2 games versus one of Carolina or Tampa Bay, I will officially be on board as well. Because Carolina's just one team that's kicked their ass for, God knows how many years now.
Yeah.
And Tampa Bay is Tampa Bay. If you can split, or maybe even, somebody has a bad game or something like that, and you can take both wins, that would be incredible. That would do so much more for this hockey team. Like, I know they're already, riding really high right now. You think they're high right now? Wait until they play one of Carolina or Tampa Bay and win.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
I mean, look at after the Vancouver game when Shaw and Kane were messing around with the reporters in the locker room, pretending to be each other, answering questions. Like, they're loosening up, they're having fun, and you could see it on the ice. And I mean, yeah, these next 2 games against Tampa Bay and Carolina are huge. Carolina first, and then Tampa Bay are huge. And then you've got 4 straight games, a set of home and homes with Colorado and Dallas. Like, that's 4 divisional games. You can really, start to claw your way up the division standings as well if you could take some points there.
Yeah,
I mean, we looked at that 15-game stretch they had, and we were like, this is comical. Somebody's getting fired at the end of it, and they've taken 11 out of the first 12 points of that stretch. So, who knows? I hope they can keep it up.
And, I said at the beginning of the season, I feel like Nashville is going to take a step back, and so far they have. And I don't believe anything that Winnipeg is really doing right now, except for, the fact that they're kind of in the same position as the Hawks, where they, score their way out of most of their troubles because they got Laine and Connor and all those guys. But their defense is truly horrific. So if there's games that you do have to win, it's the Central Division games. I know that sounds like fucking dumb shit obvious, but that home and home against Colorado and then Dallas, I think, are huge. And then any game here on out against Winnipeg is definitely a must win.
Yeah, I mean, they're all 4-point games, so you can't bury yourself. You gotta take those points.
And then just the last question, Waving Worm at Cliff Deutsch. It said, should Dach play more minutes? What are the pros and cons? We already kind of went over this, But the pros are definitely like you can see what kind of steps he can take above what he's already doing. He's excelling on the fourth line. I think he should get a look on the third between Sean Kubalik. I know we kind of already stated that. The cons is like, maybe he doesn't look as good on the third line, which is fine. Then you just go back to what was working before and slot him in on the fourth. But I think the thing is giving him more minutes isn't necessarily going to kill him. Like you saw tonight, he got over 13 and a half. I think that's perfectly acceptable for a guy like him. Like 7-8 minutes isn't going to do a whole lot for his development right now. But I think if we were to give him like the 11, 12 or even 13, just go for it. It's not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah, I completely agree as far as the pros go. Just see what you have. Just bump him up another level. See what you got. See if you can handle it. He doesn't strike me as a guy that would become overwhelmed or be in over his head. But if that is the case, then you just move him back down. He's proven to be effective on the fourth line. But just see what you got. Like what we talked about earlier. Give him a shot on the power play. Just give him a chance. Give him a shot on the power play and see what happens. You can get more minutes that way. If that's the way you want to do it. And I honestly don't see that many cons to it. I think that any good really outweighs the bad, and I don't know. I'd like to see him play more than what he has so far, and I think tonight was a step in the right direction. And he played more against Nashville too. Granted, that game was a blowout, so that could add something to do with it. But I think it's trending upward. I think maybe the 7 minutes in night games are behind us. I hope so at least, and just see what the kid has.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that's going to do it for us for the night, though. I really appreciate anybody who's listening in because I know not a lot of people listen to this, but we appreciate whoever is.
Yeah, for sure. And one more thing before we, I just want to give a quick shout out to Chris Versteeg. Always been my boy, and I'd say he unofficially retired. Just a huge part of the 2010 Cup team. Nice depth piece to the 2015 Cup team, and just one of those guys that kind of came up when the team, first started playing good. Scored a lot of big goals for him. Game 2 against Vancouver in 2010, he had the game winner with a little over a minute left, and then he scored a big goal. Game 6 against Vancouver that series. His empty netter essentially clinched the Western Conference for the Hawks in 2010 to send the Stanley Cup final. And then he had that huge goal in Game 5 against Philly. Stanley Cup final, but I don't know,
just that deep slot goal that was just a fucking snipe. I
entered the zone and walked in the middle. Yeah, I don't know, just always been one of my favorite players. I always kind of looked up to him, and good luck to him, and thanks for all the memories. So
yeah, dude, you said it, and I just if I had anything to add to what you already said, on top of he is very appreciated around these parts of town. I sincerely hope he finds a way to making his way onto CSN and being a TV personality, because honestly, I can't think of a better position for him, like post hockey career, than doing analysis with like Patrick Sharp or like Adam Burrish.
Him and Adam Burrish, yeah. Those Blackhawk TV videos back in the day with him and Ladd were
those were good.
Those were classic, yeah. And his rap at the 2010 parade, nobody will ever forget that. But just wanted to give a quick shout out to him. He's always been one of my favorite players. So, thanks for all the memories.
Yeah, dude, couldn't have said it better myself. But for me, Daniel, and Tommy, this has been One for the Dagger podcast. You guys have a great rest of your night.